Okay, you're listening to the Free Will, Science and Religion podcast, and my name's David Joseph, and today I'm here with George Ortega, Felicia Hogan, Slattery, Chandler Klebs, and Allen Worrell. And today we're talking about the problem of infinite regress, and I think, Chandler, you wanted to start us off on that?
The infinite regress is a topic that I mention to people, but the problem is they don't really understand what it means. And basically, the infinite regress is that since everything that happens is caused, well then, and each cause has a cause, then obviously everything you're doing now, it goes back to before you were born, before you were conceived, before your parents even met each other and got married and had sex and all that fun stuff. But here's the deal: it goes back much further, because think about it. It just keeps going back. It keeps going back. To before humans, before whatever their recent ancestor was, and so the idea that there's a beginning, well, how could there be a beginning? And here's the deal: some people, they try to say that there's a beginning because there was an uncaused event, which is kind of strange, because that's where you would have to go. In order to believe that there was a beginning to the universe, and when I talk about the universe, it's something. What must be made clear is I'm talking about word web definition of universe or cosmos, everything that exists everywhere. So we're talking about if there was a beginning to all things. That's just it. That whether everything, the entirety of existence, that would include anything, material, immaterial, anything that there is, everything. If there was a beginning to everything, well, then what began it? Because if there was something to begin it, well, then how would that work? Because there was no something before the beginning of things. So this is the problem: is that anything that begins to exist has to have a cause. So the only way is an eternally always existing universe.
Chandler, just very briefly relate this question to the problem of free will. Why do we need to, understand this in order to better refute free will?
That's a very good point, George. The reason this is important is, first of all, we understand that to have free will, you would have to literally be the first causer of yourself and all your choices, thoughts, beliefs, all that stuff. And we realize that we're not the first cause, because there was a cause for all of our existence. But here's the deal: is the concept of a first cause, just like it's not possible for us humans, how is it a first cause possible for anything else? And so that's it, because this first cause thing gets into the problem of free will, because you realize that you're not responsible if you're not the first cause, because something else made you do what you do. So that's an important thing. So then there's the problem, because a lot of people, they're not thinking the whole universe wide, but they say, oh well, God, in the beginning, God created the heavens, the earth, or whatever, But well, what caused God to do that?
I'd like to also note that even if there was a first cause, if there wasn't an infinite regress, or even if we were a first cause, if we came out somehow uncaused, we would have no say in how we came about, regardless of that. And in other words, if we were an acausal event, an event that doesn't have a cause to it, how we come about is something that we can't cause ourselves. So even if we go to that level of saying there is no infinite regress, there is a first cause. That first cause is something that can never be a willed event.
I'm so glad
ever.
that you said that.
So
is perfect for this topic, because it's true. An event of true randomness, meaning in the strongest sense of uncaused, means that we didn't cause it either. We're not responsible for whatever event that started the universe, any more than we're responsible for what our parents did before we were conceived. You can't be responsible for something random or uncaused. So that's a good point. And it also relates to how free will is completely impossible by any combination of determinism or indeterminism, causality or acausality.
I would like to also submit that we could extend the conversation to whether or not the Christian God could have a free will.
Absolutely. All right. So what would be the argument for God having a free will?
Well, it would involve a special. What was it, Alan? What fallacy were you talking about a second ago?
Special pleading.
Special pleading fallacy, because we would have to submit that he is an uncaused being, which would allow him somehow to have free will because there was not a cause to his thoughts, I guess.
Right. And even if God did come about uncaused, it has the same problem. He wouldn't have a say in how he came about uncaused. And if we're saying that God is an infinite regress itself, that's equally as problematic. How does God have a say over that infinite regress that just keeps going back in time? An infinite regress is a problematic idea itself. So both of these ideas of coming about as a starting point and an infinite regress both have kind of these unintuitive problems.
Right. It sort of blows your mind either way. It
does.
Alan?
Yeah, one other kind of question to submit to this, and I think Chandler touched on it a bit, is that our choices are essentially dictated by our situation, right? So you can't know something that you don't know, in the sense that if a child, say, wants to become a lawyer or wants to become a doctor, or perhaps an anesthesiologist or something along those lines, they cannot know that field exists without somehow first being exposed to it, to know that it actually is a possibility for them to do something. So if you take a college student today, let's say, right, 18-year-old graduating from high school who's looking to go to college, and you ask them, how are you going to fund this? Well, they may say, I'll get scholarships, I'll get student loans, say, or perhaps I can get some form of government funding. Well, let's say the government funding falls through and they can't get government funding, and it's between scholarships and student loans. Well, at that point, those are their two choices. Though if they don't know that perhaps government funding is still available to them when they turn the age of 24 in the United States, that will never become an option for them because they don't know that they can do that. Right?
Wait, can we?
Yes. You didn't know that?
No.
Yes. And I'll explain how later. But anyway.
Good to know.
So the question is then, if God was an uncaused cause, then does God have the ability to know all range of choices and their effects? Or is he locked into a specific range of choices and others that he can't possibly know?
Wow. Wow.
That makes sense.
I suppose we could theoretically give God some kind of, I don't, you ever hear of Laplace's demon where he understands the causal nature of everything, and based on that causal nature he can just assess the future events based on his the exact state of, at any given time. So if we look at the state we're in right now, he can predict the future event based on the state just by understanding the causal variables that will lead up to that future state. So we could technically apply that to some kind of God, I guess.
Well, and I would assume too, if you were to say, well, God is all knowing, that this issue of knowing choices, right, kind of goes out the window, right? Because God knows everything at this point. But it would be interesting, to me, it's an interesting question of how much does God actually know? Right. Or how much could God actually know?
Yeah, and here it relates to actually this constraint of logic and reason that seems to guide, this whole exploration, because I think we have to acknowledge that we're trying to figure out infinite regress. In other words, how could time go back infinitely when one part of us is saying, well, it must have started at some point, you know. But then we ask, well, no, it couldn't have started at some point because there must have been something before that. So, you know, I mean, it may be that this question that we're exploring of infinite regress transcends logic and reasoning. And, you know, I mean, if that's the case, if there's a kind of an element of reality that transcends logic, there's no way we can figure it out logically, then in a certain sense, the God can have a free will, and who else knows what could possibly happen?
Well, and I think part of this too, and I've heard from watching various lectures and such that, well, at least with the Big Bang Theory, once you get down to a certain point in time, I think it was like a trillionth of a second or something. I don't remember the exact time. Time itself just falls apart. So I don't know that the notion of causing a cause like that, this first cause notion, would really even make sense when you have no time and have no, you don't really have the ability for something to cause something else.
Well, let's explore.
I don't know if that even makes sense.
So, Alan,
Yeah.
so let's say you're right. Let's say you're right. Let's say at a certain level time breaks down and there is no time. So then the question becomes, how did we get time from a time where there was no time?
Yeah, and that goes to the same problem of having a non-caused event or something starting the universe, because if prior there's nothing that caused that event, so that if we don't have a
if you don't
time
have
frame, like it's a conception of time that would cause something, or even I don't. Yes, it doesn't. What we could say is if there was like an infinite loop, for example. For example, one theory is that our universe started expanding from a black hole of another universe, and that universe could have came from a black hole in our universe. So it would be a kind of a circular type thing. But then it still has the same problem as an infinite regress, where what starts that? You know, how does it? What starts the loop from happening? Or
are you now introducing the idea of like multiple universes?
We could, yeah, we could say that there's multiple universes. Or we could even say there's one universe. You could technically say that our universe gave birth to itself through a black hole. I know that sounds complicated. But,
Yeah,
but
it does to me.
But it's probably easier looking at it as two universes. One where there's one black hole, and another one there's another black hole, and it gives. But these are just ideas that some people postulate. But it still has the same problem with an infinite loop then. And what begins this loop? So.
Yeah, and I don't know that even the notion of an uncaused cause. I don't know how much sense that makes, given that we live in a world of cause and effect. I don't really think that anyone in this world has ever experienced something that is an uncaused cause.
Unless maybe you're an electron.
Well,
it would be hard to know what an uncaused cause looks like, because basically it would be an event that we just don't see a cause for, which we have events that we don't see a cause for, but for the most part we assume that there probably is a cause to them. But on the quantum level, some people don't, and I know that that's controversial in this group, and it all depends on which interpretation we're talking about, and I don't think we want to get to the quantum theory at this point. So.
But
Another day.
Alan,
Another day, though.
Right, Alan. So what you're saying then is that that there could not logically have been a first cause, because everything has a cause. So that there's no logical option to an infinite regress. Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm saying I don't know that even the notion of an uncaused cause makes sense unless you move into a special pleading fallacy.
I don't think it would be called an uncaused cause. That idea doesn't make sense because you're calling it a cause. It would just be a non-caused event, basically.
This notion, at least from the Kalam cosmological argument that God caused everything, the very notion that something caused something else prior to the universe's existence, right? Prior to us having space, time, all the different things that have come out of that, for me just doesn't make sense. And the idea that you need something there other than just simply saying I don't know, To me, that's the best answer. I don't know how the universe began. I'm not a scientist. I love reading about what scientists are saying and what they're coming up with and all of that. But
yeah, I think
someone to come out and say, "Hey, God caused this," for me, just doesn't make any sense.
So I have something to make this a little bit more complicated.
Oh, good. That'll
So,
help me.
what, David?
That will help me.
I know it's your favorite thing.
Definitely.
Okay, so if we're essentially on the same page, that doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. That we need an uncaused cause. The infinite regress doesn't really make a lot of sense, because then there'd be no beginning period, because you just keep going back, and we can't really wrap our minds around infinity. And of course, this is going under the assumption, our premise, that everything must have a cause.
Right.
So if we decide that our premise doesn't lead to a logical conclusion, wouldn't it then be logical to believe there's something wrong with our premise?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we're not saying that. I don't think we're saying that an infinite regress is necessarily illogical. It's just counterintuitive, and same thing with a non-cause event. It's counterintuitive, but that doesn't mean that when we say something is illogical, we're saying that we can actually contradict that thing. And I don't think we're actually saying that for an infinite regress. It's just not intuitively. It's hard to wrap our minds around something. Just keep stemming back.
Yeah, and I want to respond to what Trick just said, because I think the reason that it's so counterintuitive for us to think of an uncaused cause or an infinite regress or whatever, well, I think the reason it's hard for us because in our experience every day we see that everything has a cause, and we also see beginning and end. We see everything having a beginning and having an end. So the idea of that there has to be a beginning is stuck in our heads, even if it's false.
Well,
so that's what I'm saying, though. Maybe that if we're not able to draw a logical conclusion from that premise, then maybe our premise is wrong.
And let's keep in mind too, this question came up about an infinite regress because of the Coulomb argument. And that argument essentially goes that the universe began to exist. If something began to exist, something else must have caused its existence. Therefore, the universe was caused by something else. So really part of the premise, therefore that something else is God. Right. And God is that uncaused cause because everything must have a cause except for God.
Very interesting.
That the universe began. Like you said, that the universe itself wasn't an regress.
Your audio is good. Hey, Trick, your audio is terrible, and you can't.
Trick, come aboard. Your voice is cutting again. Can everyone hear me?
Is everyone here?
All right, I can hear.
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
All right, yeah.
Yep.
Trick, are you here? Are you back?
Yep.
There?
Can you hear me now?
Perfect, yeah.
Weird.
Wow.
All right, so wait. Go ahead. Who's Alan?
I was going to say that was quite odd. Everyone just kind of broke up there for a moment.
I think it happens when too many of us try to talk at the same time, but that's all right.
Where were we?
I had just mentioned about the Coulomb cosmological argument, and I gave the kind of the structure of that argument as the universe began to exist. If something began to exist, something else must have caused its existence. Therefore, the universe was caused by something else, to which Felicia said, therefore, God, because God is that uncaused cause that causes the universe.
Yeah, and that seems to be like a semantic consideration in the sense that, like, for example, if God caused the universe or created the universe, and there was nothing to create the universe from except God, because God was all that existed, then it seems God had to have created the universe from God, meaning that God and the universe are essentially synonymous.
Yeah. Wow.
Well,
whoa, I think David and I just fell into the same circle there.
I wanted to say something here. A lot of people, that's their definition of God, being a first cause or an uncaused cause. So what this means is if that, by that definition of God, well, then a determinist who's like everything has a cause is atheist by definition, because there can't be an uncaused cause or a first cause. Like with the way my brain's set up, it has to be an infinite regress. I can't get out of that. I don't see any other way. I mean, and my premise could be wrong, like Felicia's been saying. Like our premise could be wrong about everything having a cause. And I just think that the reason that the determinism and indeterminism debate continues is because you can't prove that something's uncaused. So that's part of the problem there.
And it's
or at least
important
we haven't
to
figured it out yet. And can you go back to saying something
Oh
about
yeah,
atheist by definition?
what I was saying is that if God is defined as a first cause or an uncaused cause, and you're a determinist who says everything has a cause, well then that means that you don't believe in God, because God is an uncaused cause. So
yes, if you define God as an uncaused cause,
Right, instead of an infinite regress.
then that would work. Except for not everybody does. Like the Buddhists, for instance, don't have a creator God. The universe itself is infinite and cyclical. So it essentially, I guess, would collapse on itself and create a singularity. And I really don't care for science at all. So I'm going to do the best that I can to explain it without screwing up the science too terribly. So essentially, the universe would collapse into a singularity, and then we'd have the Big Bang and start all over again. And then it would wind down, collapse into a singularity, Big Bang, starts all over again. And the universe itself is what is eternal. They don't have a creator God, but they do have gods. It's one of the 5 or 7 realms that you can be reincarnated into, but it's not
this
infinite.
is very interesting. Like you said, Felicia, not everybody defines God as the first cause or uncaused cause. I just say that because so many Christians define God that way that I've talked to. But
well, all Christians do.
And really too, I mean, if you're defining God as just that prime mover, right, that first uncaused cause, I mean, you're only reaching deism at that point.
Right.
Just because you would say that there is a God and that God is a prime mover. Now, if you were to go a step further and say, well, that prime mover cares about you, cares about, who you're having sex with, who you're eating with, who you're, how many hairs are on your head and how long your beard actually is, then you've gone, way further from that deistic position.
Right. And in regards to that deism, it doesn't even mean that the God still exists. The deist God could actually start the universe rolling and then
walk away.
Which is what it looks
right,
like.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Actually, that's necessary, because, like, if we buy into determinism, causality, that deist can't do but just start it and watch it go. At that point, the causal process has begun.
Well, and I mean, and a God that isn't here is the same as a God who doesn't exist. I mean, the results of that are identical. So
yeah,
it's hard to tell the difference.
Yeah, it's hard to tell the difference between a God who's not involved and a God that doesn't exist.
That's right, Alan. Yeah. In fact, that is what you said. Like, for all practical purposes, a God who's not involved, that we're not aware of, is from our perspective the same as one that doesn't exist anyway. So you can't tell the difference.
Right, and the issue then comes in, well, if that God cares about you but isn't involved, then what right does that God have to lock you in their basement and torture you for the rest of eternity for not believing in him?
And Alan, that's one of the main reasons we're doing this show. This it's the most evil belief I can think of, that some people are so horrible they're going to, like, spend the rest of eternity in like, the horror. I mean, like, so yeah, to the extent we can get people to understand that free will does not exist, then all of a sudden this whole hell thing goes out the window.
And to that effect, it is a tangent, clearly, but because it's semi on topic, I want to read a comment on one of my more recent YouTube videos. I think it had to do with why you should worship God because he's a sociopath. A response to true empiricism. True empiricism being the one who said you should worship God because he's a sociopath. Me, obviously, disagreeing. So someone with the username Fivewinder says, our God is a loving, creative genius whose creation was marred by the devil. He will fix it. This world is a trap for that snake and its followers. We who believe in the Lord will live forever while the smoke of our enemies' torment rises up forever. This whole earth will be burned clean of that filth. If that's not love, I don't know what is.
Good God.
What?
Oh, man.
I said I would recommend you see someone about your sociopathic and sadistic tendencies, as well as your general inability to experience empathy.
Wow.
Oh, God, yeah.
But that was
Yeah.
bone chilling.
That encapsulates the evil of Christianity and Judaism, these beliefs, that posit a God in hell. I mean, what could be
Yeah.
more hateful?
How do you word it that way? Like, a lot of Christians will at least try to word it in such a way and drop some of the more immoral parts of the Bible and of God's character, nature, and actions to sort of justify a belief in this God as a loving God. But then you get this guy who doesn't even try to hide it.
Right. And this
But
ties
he
back
still
to
thinks that's love.
this ties back to the whole free will thing in regards to this guy obviously thinks that these people deserve to go to hell. So they deserve to burn in hell for eternity, basically. So
Yeah,
Yeah.
true.
but
So really, though, I'm sure he clearly has sadistic and sociopathic tendencies, and
yeah, I
he kinda
understand
scares
that,
me.
Felicia.
Just
And I wanted to say something here because I think it needs to be made clear that this belief in hell really is, like George has said before, like the most hateful belief ever. I mean, it's just so sadistic. And see, this is one of the main reasons I'm part of this podcast. It's the reason I got into the free will topic. A lot of it, because that was what literally scared me the hell out of Christianity, but it's not because I have some desire to stop people from believing their religion when it makes them happy. The problem is it's not making people happy, and I want to increase their happiness by getting rid of this belief in hell that, first of all, it isn't proven, and is unjust, even if it was true, and is not making people happier anyway, so it's bad on all accounts.
I can't improve upon that statement. It's truly an atrocious belief.
All right, David, we've got about a couple of minutes left. You want to wrap it up in a few minutes? And I've got a proposal. I mean, we've dealt with the religion, we've dealt with the science. Now, this group, we're actually essentially leading humanity to a fundamentally new consciousness. Everybody's gotten who we are and why we do things completely wrong. So it's great we're doing the world a service. So if you guys want to do a third podcast, maybe we can focus on how understanding that absolutely nothing is up to us helps us in our personal lives, with our friends, with our family, with interacting in the world.
Haven't we done that last week?
Oh, yeah. Well, here's the thing, Felicia. I mean, I've been dealing with this for decades, right? And it's
so it all blends together. Is that what you're saying?
No. It's one thing to understand that nothing is up to us, right? But this belief is so pervasive that even if we know that, a lot of times, for example, if somebody will say something horrible to us, we'll react as if they have free will. So we want to try to kind of even overcome our tendency to have that be our immediate reaction. But I mean,
I'm still working on that.
Yeah, we can talk about something else. All right, David, you want to wrap it up, or?
Yeah, sure. Just before we do that, I kind of have the image in my head now of a big long line of dominoes, and I can never get to the start of the dominoes. Is that kind of
Yes. Yes.
Just to simplify it for me.
Yeah, it is. The notion of that uncaused cause, though, is at some point in this line of dominoes, there exists a single domino that when you hit it, it makes all the other dominoes fall.
A single domino that nobody else put there.
Right. That is there because it itself needs to be there. It's necessary in some way.
Right.
That was a really good visual, though, David. That was really
it is.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Well. Still a little bit confused, but okay.
Join the club.
Okay. So you've been listening to the Free Will, Science and Religion podcast, and I hope you join us again soon. Thank you.